Welcome to the Pat White Show.
I don't know how often any of you drive to northern Indiana. Maybe you have a lake place up in the lake in Steuben County. Well, if you drive up 69 into Steuben County, the chances are that you are going to see billboards promoting marijuana places. I mean, dispensaries, if you will, up in Michigan that sell marijuana. As a matter of fact, you can even see those down here in Allen County. I happen to know that if you drive on Lima Road, sure enough, you're going to see one there, right there, maybe two. I don't remember how many they have. But the marijuana dispensaries are advertising freely here in the state of Indiana. Well, until now. Yep, a new bill has passed and signed by the Gov that, are you ready? Outlaws marijuana advertising on billboards and in flyers sent to people via the mail in the state of Indiana. Folks, you want to see a First Amendment case going up to the courts? I think we're about to see a big one here, because that's taking away free speech. And free speech, I suppose, is part of what the First Amendment is, correct? Now, I'm not a marijuana player. I don't have anything to do with it. But marijuana is sold in every state surrounding us. And those states, and in those states, the dispensaries are going after the people in the Hoosier state who want those products but can't get them because it remains illegal in Indiana. But there was a bill in the House and the Senate that had to do with the BMV. That's the driving department, right? Well, this was put on as a tag, a little add-along goodie that was shoved into the bill saying that advertising of marijuana dispensaries in other states here in Indiana, as well as mail-out flyers that are sent to people in their junk mail, are outlawed in the state of Indiana. Now, you're saying, oh, wait a minute. Does that mean all those billboards around in Fort Wayne and up in Steuben County are all going to disappear like that? Yeah. See, those companies have contracts. And those contracts can be fulfilled, because then when you're breaking contract law, you got some other issues. But I'll tell you right now what I think is going to happen. These marijuana dispensaries and all these places in there are probably going to be backed up by things like the ACLU, whatever group you can think of, is probably going to come in and back these dispensaries saying, you cannot outlaw advertising for something in your state that happens to be legal in every other state around you. Because, well, here's a perfect example. There's parts of the United States that are what they call dry counties. Alcohol is not allowed. You go to the, I think it's I think it's one of the Jack Daniels brewery, I believe, or the distillery. That's a dry county. You can't get alcohol in those dry counties. But I believe they can still run advertising in there for getting beer, wine, whatever. But I think outlawing advertising for marijuana places, and when it's legal in every other state surrounding us, is going to be a big legal case that is going to hit Indiana. And frankly, I think Indiana in this one is going to lose. Now, as far as legalizing marijuana in the state, I have some issues with that, because I don't believe the police have a way of identifying people that are driving under the influence like they do with someone with alcohol. You got the blood test. And that blood test can be done to blowing the breathalyzer. That'll tell you right then and there. That's probable cause. That they could work with. Now, some places you have to take your blood and find out what's going on. But in order to get a blood test of someone on the marijuana, you got to take them to jail. You got to have probable cause. You got to get that all done. And that's probably not going to hold up in a lot of areas. So I'm just saying, the idea that they're going to say, hey, we're outlawing advertising for these marijuana shops or whatever they call themselves in states like Michigan and Ohio and Illinois or wherever else they are, is illegal in the state of Indiana? Folks, I think you are looking for a big lawsuit, and I think we will see it coming sooner than you think. This is just my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but even I can see what's going on here. This, to me, is purely a violation of the First Amendment. Now, You going to outlaw, beer in the state, advertising beer? How about outlawing massage parlors and nail spas, just to say a few things, not that they're illegal. I'm just telling you what's going on. Look for a lawsuit coming soon, folks, because I think the state has bitten off a big one in this one, and they ain't going to be able to chew it. Every year in Washington, D.C., they have a dinner. Now, they have a dinner in Washington, D.C. all the time, but this is kind of a unique dinner. This is a dinner where the White House correspondents get together for their annual White House Correspondents' Dinner. Now, here's something kind of interesting. In the most recent dinners, the President of the United States, who sometimes would attend and be there in the correspondence, Donald Trump does not show up. Not this time, not ever. And there's another thing they have at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They normally have a comedian. Jocular, funny, puts laughs, has a good time. Didn't have one of those either. Well, it turns out that the 111th annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, they became a bit defiant because their line at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was, "We're not the enemy of the people." And I got to thinking about that. We're not the enemy of the people. Really? Aren't you the people, the enemy who said that the Hunter Biden's laptop was a fake, Russian disinformation? That was just one of the things. Aren't you the correspondents who said to the people, everything was clean and tidy with Joe Biden, he was perfect, he was in great health, he had no problem whatsoever? And everybody in America was looking and seeing exactly what was going on. Aren't you the same White House that did that, correspondents? Aren't you the White House that continually, well, to be honest with you, lied about damn near everything to us, the people? Maybe you figured we would eat it up. Maybe you figured we would buy it. Well, eventually we didn't. And apparently a lot of us didn't buy it. And as a journalism grad myself, I sat there and went, man, these people are not the fifth estate. It used to be journalism was who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those were the numbers you worked with. Those were the concepts you worked with. My journalism instructor said, if you veer from that lane, you're going to put an opinion in. And everything today by journalists is written an opinion. Nothing is necessarily the facts, it's what their opinion is. And if you tell modern day journalists about who, what, where, when, why, and how, they'd laugh at you. Well, of course, we learn opinion. That's what we do. We're here to save the country. Well, I'm sorry. You say you're not the enemy of the people, you're not the friend. No, you're the enemy of the people in power, and if the people in power aren't in your particular tribe, they're the enemy. And right now we're seeing pretty much tribal action going on, folks. Sure, you can say all you want, but let's give you countless thing after countless thing. Remember the COVID situation? Kids didn't go to school for about 2 years. Everybody had to wear a mask. You were spouting things out there that flat out proved to be totally untrue. And then you went accosted with it and said, why didn't you say something about Joe Biden's condition that you knew what was going on? You blew it off. Well, that was the past. We look forward. You don't want to answer up to anything you did. You are. In a lot of ways, you're trying to trick the people. You're not being honest with the people. And if you have an enemy, that's the person sitting in the White House. So it just depends on which party you're with. Depends on who's in your tribe. Because, folks, we have become tribes in this country. You have a blue tribe and a red tribe, and they each hate each other. And unfortunately, the blue tribe has infested itself within the modern journalistic media. And that's not the media I grew up with. That's not the media I understood. And that's not the media I was trained to be. And unfortunately, those in the current media have a whole different training than I do. And the sad thing is, they may say they're not the enemy. They certainly aren't the friend of the American public. So, have you ever had to go out and park at the Fort Wayne International Airport? If you've done, you kind of remember what the procedure is. You pull in, decide if you're going to park in the long-term or the short-term parking, and you pull in that particular venue. You got the little gate there, the little machine. Pull up machine, you print out a ticket. Now, that ticket is the big thing you got to watch out for. You got to store that thing someplace where you don't lose it because you're going to need it when you're done parking. And people will say, well, do I put it up in the visor? Do I carry it with me? Put it in my purse? Whatever they do with it, they got to be concerned about that ticket because that ticket is determining how much it's going to cost you to park. Now, that was the old way. Guess what? There's something new at Fort Wayne International. And now, no ticky, no ticky. Yep, here's the newest thing they got at Fort Wayne International. You go out to the airport, you don't need to get a ticket if you don't want to. You can pull right in, pick out, the parking you're going to park in, and a camera will take a shot of your license plate. Now, not your front license plate because, well, you don't have one, but your rear license plate, it'll record it. So when you pull in there and you get your ticket or you say, I'm here to park, bingo, you push the button, camera takes a picture of your license plate, and that becomes your ticket. So when you're all done parking, you picked up whoever it is or dropped off whoever it is, you jump back in your car and you head to the exit ramp on where the parking is. And when you pull up there, guess what? Read your license plate again. And that license plate will then determine exactly how long you were there and how much you're going to pay. Now, here's something important. You can only use your Apple Pay, your Google Pay, your debit card, or your credit card, or whatever you choose to use. No cash is allowed at that system. Now, you can still get a ticket if you don't want to have your license plate scanned. That's fine. And I think you can still pay for cash, provided there's someone there in the booth that'll take your money and give you change or whatever. But you understand, folks, modern technology is taking over everything. And this is part of AI. This is the part where the license plate is photographed by a camera. And when you pull up, photographs your plate again and says, okay, it matches up with this one here. Here's how long they were parked, and here's your bill. Then you hand them your credit card or enter your phone to them, and it scans off the phone on Apple Pay or whatever you're using, and you get the entire thing paid for, and you don't use cash. That's where America is going, folks. That's what's going on with AI. And pretty soon, well, you're not going to be using cash for anything. Cash will become passé. So, have to use your phone, you have to use your credit card, or maybe something else they're going to have to put where you're going to have to be able to use it to cash money. Well, that's what's going on. So if you're going out to Fort Wayne International, now you know license plate scanners will scan your plate, determine how long you parked there, and that's what you're going to be paying with your credit card, your debit card, Apple Pay, Google Pay, or whatever. All that's coming up, and they've got it, folks, right now. So if you plan to park, now you understand how the concept works. At Fort Wayne International, AI is coming to town. Well, just about everybody you know probably has some internet service. Well, at least most folks do. But how do you get your internet service? Well, more often than not, you probably get it over a landline. But there's another way, and some people are using that way, and it comes from our friend Elon Musk. Back in many years ago, starting in 2019, he launched a thing called Starlink. Now, Starlink is little satellites that he's launched all around the world. Matter of fact, he's got 8,000 of them floating around the entire Earth at roughly 300 miles up. All right, 300 miles up, 8,000 satellites. Now, if you want to get in on that, you get a Starlink system. You can have it in your vehicle. You can have it in your home. You can have it virtually anywhere. And more people are getting it that way than getting it through a company, through a wire coming into your home or wherever it happens to be. Well, now it turns out that Jeff Bezos, that's the man from Amazon, he's decided he wants his own satellite system to compete with, well, Starlink. And he has just launched his new satellite system. Now, he had a test run back in 2023, put up a couple of satellites, but he just launched from it's called United Launch Alliance, private company, and they used an Atlas V rocket. and they launched 27 satellites at one time. It took off from the Cape. It's called Project Kuiper. Now, Kuiper is the belt, the edge of the universe, if you will, the edge of our particular universe, beyond Neptune. And that's why he calls it the Kuiper Project. Well, what his plan is to put thousands of satellites at roughly the distance of, approximately about 300 miles, somewhere in that area there, or actually 400 miles when I think about it. He's going to be 400 miles up. So his are a little bit higher than Elon Musk satellites. And here's something to remember. When you get in those orbits that low, those things eventually will come back to Earth because the gravity of Earth is going to pull it back in. Same goes for the Skylab, the international orbiter thing up there in the sky. Eventually, it's going to come down. Gravity's going to make it come down. That's just how it works. So, putting thousands of satellites up in the air, we're creating a huge, giant circle around the Earth. There are currently thousands, and I mean thousands of satellites and space junk surrounding the planet. And the problem is, astronomers trying to look out to see other planets are having a harder time now. Stuff's getting in their way. But that's what it is. So now we're trying to get satellite internet service available for everybody through Amazon and his Kuiper project. And Elon Musk has got his Starlink service. Now, is that going to be the be-all, end-all in the world? Nobody really knows yet. But I can tell you this. If you're starting to think about having satellite in your car, or internet in your car, or internet in your airplane, or internet in your boat, wherever you're going, it is now pretty much going to be, that's a possibility that you could have it wherever you go, wherever you are on the planet Earth. You'll be able to have internet service and contact somebody, or have them contact you. Who knows? Call somebody in the middle of nowhere, and you'll be able to be in touch with someone. That's what's being worked on. Elon Musk has got his 8,000 Starlinks, and Jeff Bezos is about to have his, probably 3,000 or so, 3,200 satellites from his new Kuiper project. So, internet service, telephone calls, video, you name it. It's all going to be available to you wherever you are in the planet Earth. But you're covering the Earth with a lot of space junk. And that's the problem that eventually we're going to have to deal with because it's pollution. Whether anybody likes it or not, it's messing things up and it's creating a shield around the Earth that eventually may be a big problem. Just saying. Well, the 2025 National Football League Collegiate Draft is done. It's finished. It lasted a number of days from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Big crowd. Give them that. But the biggest story was not who was drafted. The biggest story was who wasn't drafted. That's right. They had a number of quarterbacks in this year's draft. I think Cam Ward was the only one that I thought was decent. The guy's got his head out pretty good. Going to do pretty well, I hope. But the biggest story was Sanders. Now, here's a kid that played under Daddy at the Deion Sanders. His dad was famous. I give him that. Played at the University of Colorado. He had some stats, but they weren't big-time stats. Didn't win a bowl game. Didn't go to the Senior Bowl. Didn't participate in any of the NFL workouts. All the things they had done. And then, when he was interviewed by the coaches and the assistant coaches of all the NFL teams that were looking at him, he basically blew him off. Apparently, he had an attitude going on, and it bothered a whole lot of folks. Now, all of this got me to thinking about a movie that I saw a couple of years ago called Draft Day. Yep, Draft Day with Kevin Costner. He was a general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and this is kind of interesting when you think about it. General manager of the Cleveland Browns. And they had the number one draft pick, and they were looking at a kid named Bo Callahan. Played in Wisconsin, I guess it was. Terrific quarterback. And then they started digging into the background of this kid. And something didn't sit right with Kevin Costner. trading back and forth, and the draft day comes, and they get rid of Bo and get who they want. I mean, the whole story, but it's Cleveland. So, the draft day of the real 2025, these big stars, Sador Sanders, drops. Didn't get drafted in the first round, second round, third round, fourth round. Finally, in the fifth round, the Cleveland Browns, after they'd already picked another quarterback, in the fifth round, picked Sador Sanders. And they showed a video of the draft room in Cleveland when his name was announced. And you know, they show the draft room there, people are high-fiving and laughing and clapping and just hugging each other. People in the Cleveland Browns draft room, I've seen better clapping at a golf game. Something ain't right, folks. I don't know what really happened. I just know what you hear, that he bombed out with the teams on interviews and blew them off. And there was Daddy, who said, he ain't going to play for Cleveland. Of course, he said this a few years ago. Maybe his mood has changed. But here, didn't Sador Sanders have his house or his room or whatever it was decorated up, spent more money on that, and he getting his first year? Well, there's the problem. Now, some are saying it's racist, they had it in for him. Look, if you don't make a good impression, I don't care who you are in the workaday world. You know, if you're going to hire someone, you want to do well in your interview, folks. I don't care who you are. You have a lousy interview, chances are pretty good. If you're working for me, you ain't going to get hired. Well, he didn't get hired until the fifth round. Now, here's the savior in all of this. This is my point. There was another quarterback who was drafted, I think, in the fifth or sixth round years ago. He ended up going to the New England Patriots. Had a big chip on his shoulder. Thought he was good. Got way down drafted. And he said, you know what? I'm going to prove you guys wrong. Well, now that quarterback, who is now a retired quarterback, he's got Super Bowl rings for the entire hand. Tom Brady. I only say this because maybe, just maybe, Sador Sanders might have that chip on his shoulder. Maybe. And if he does, maybe he could put it to good use. Because maybe, just maybe, he could prove to the entire National Football League and the populace out there that watched all this stuff going on in the draft, say, hey, he actually turned out to be pretty good. And maybe, just maybe, he'd be good enough to bring Cleveland, dare I say it, a Super Bowl? Wouldn't that be interesting? The Cleveland Browns winning a Super Bowl with Sador Sanders as the QB after drafting him in the fifth round and no applause? Now that, folks, would be a story. Sort of like the story I watched in the movies, Draft Day with Kevin Costner. That's my look at it. Could be wrong in a lot of areas, but I'm just telling you my observation. As a regular person sitting there watching the draft on TV going, what kind of games are being played? And did Sador Sanders deserve what he got? With that attitude, folks, he probably did. Just saying. Well, for the Catholics in the audience, I have news for you involving the conclave of cardinals to determine who is going to be the next pope of the Catholic Church. Turns out they have decided that May the 7th is going to be the day that some 135 cardinals from around the world are going to show up in Rome and get together and have a vote. A couple of problems going on here. One, most of these cardinals don't know each other. So they're going to have to spend probably an inordinate amount of time getting to know each other, going, hey, Cardinal so-and-so, me, Cardinal so-and-so, because they don't know who they're going to be voting for. If nobody knows nobody, for the most part, then how are they going to come to a 66-vote conclusion as to who is going to become the next pope? And to me, that's a very interesting question to ask. Now, there's certain ones out there. I've made a mention of these before. There's some of the top ones who are considered out there. My vote, frankly, was for Timothy Dolan of New York City. That's my particular vote. And obviously picking somebody like him to be the Pope is probably slim and none, slim left town. But you've got all these 135 cardinals. Now keep in mind, you have to be under 80 years of age to vote. So, any of these cardinals over the age of 80 can't vote. And yet, they've got to figure out who on earth is going to be the one to take over for Cardinal or for Pope Francis. Now, Pope Francis had a mentality, and his mentality was toward women and gays and social justice. That was pretty much the keynote of his papalism. While the conservatives in the Catholic Church are saying, no, we got to go back to the things like that John Paul was in favor of, and like Pope Benedict XVI was. Go back to conservative doctrine rather than what was being done by Pope Francis. So, will they get it done in 2 days? Will they determine who they want to have for Pope? And like I said, any of these cardinals who go into this particular conclave thinking that he is going to become Pope is going to come back out as a cardinal, not a Pope. Because usually the person they select is someone who, well, doesn't want the job. A lot of people don't want this job because you become cloistered, you got so many things. You don't have a lot of freedom that you used to have as a cardinal. You got to be there in the Vatican, you can't go anyplace, you can't do anything, and when you do go out, you got to ride the thing called a Pope-mobile. Not exactly the most fun. So, will the white smoke come emanating quickly from the Sistine Chapel? I do not know. Will they be able to pick a Pope in 2 days? I don't know. Because you figure 135 cardinals who don't know each other, then how are you going to come to consensus and pick a Pope with 2/3 of the majority of the cardinals? That, my friends, is a very difficult situation. And will it happen? Well, of course it will. Remember, Benedict served for 12 years, or Pope Francis, rather, served for 12 years. And how long will the next pontiff serve? No one really knows. And where the next pontiff will come from, no one knows. And frankly, with the cardinals not knowing each other, to find someone in 2 days to get 60% of the vote, no one knows. Will it work itself out? It usually does. So, watch for the media, watch for the smoke coming out of the chimney. When it's white, they got a plan. Just saying, that's how it's going to go for the new pontiff of the Catholic Church, replacing the passed on Pope Francis. Should be interesting, especially who they choose. We will find out in a matter of days. You know, one of the most difficult things for most of us to do is to go to a funeral home and attend the services for, well, someone we knew, loved, or friend, or whatever. Going to a funeral home was never fun. And then you have to be there for the ceremony, and I don't know about you, but funeral services to me are usually kind of dark and dank and, well, nothing I really want to go to. Now, there are certain things that some people have when they pass away. There's a thing called a wake. I don't know if you ever heard of that. Very popular in certain cultures. And a wake is where you go there and celebrate the passing of someone, and, well, frankly, they do it with alcohol. And it's very popular. If you ever been to a wake for someone, well, you stand around and toast to someone, and pretty well get yourself oiled up. Well, it turns out that a funeral home in Columbus, Ohio, is doing something that nobody has ever tried to do. They got themselves are you ready for this? A liquor permit. That's right. They got themselves a liquor permit so they could actually have the services with a little more life to them. And have I been to a funeral where they did serve alcohol? Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, it was one of the last wishes of the individual who had passed away, with one of his finest bottles of whatever he had, and literally even people in the funeral home were imbibing. His last wish of the bereaved, and he had his special brand there, and we were all consuming it. It's part of a send-off for him. But over in Columbus, Ohio, a company called Evergreen Funeral Cremation and Reception Hall. I know that sounds really weird because it is. But apparently, this family bought this old chocolate factory back around 2015 and turned it into a cremation center, funeral home, and a reception hall. And what the owner did, his name was Hunter Triplett. He said, hey, get a liquor license and kind of liven up the funerals a little bit. People want to come in, they can imbibe, have a little something to toast the bereaved, and do a send-off for somebody. Now, is that proper? Well, it's a funeral. Will it get more people to come to a funeral saying, hey, we got an open bar? Well, no, it might. Can't guarantee anything, but it certainly might. The point being here is people, hate going to funerals, and I hate going to funerals. And frankly, because they're dark, they're morbid, and they're not much fun. But I guess if somebody had an open bar and said, hey, come on there and have a toast to the past individual, might work. Don't know how much something like that's going to cost, but hey, somebody's going to get cremated. You have a toast to them with a three-way permit at a mortuary and a funeral home. More power to them. Just something that life is changing, folks. The world is changing. And now, imagine going out with a bang, and I mean a big bang. Maybe a Jack Daniels bang. You just never know what you're going to get. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about counties in the state of Illinois wishing to join other states, whether it's Missouri or Indiana. And obviously, that's probably not going to happen. There's too many rules and regulations you'd have to jump through to make it happen. But you wonder why those counties want out of their particular state and into somebody else's state? Well, here's one of the things that may be something to tell you. You see, in the state of Illinois, that more than 18,000 Illinois students, among those in 4,000 schools, were not proficient in basic education at their grade level. Do you hear that? 18,000 out of 4,000 schools not proficient in reading, not proficient in math. According to the new study, 80% in 80 schools and in 24 schools, kids are not proficient in reading and math in Illinois in massive numbers. Massive numbers of kids can't read. And right now it shows that schools failed. It's the biggest failure in the entire state of Illinois is in the Chicago public school system. That's right. Chicago public school system and some schools over there in Illinois on the across the river from St. Louis. Those are the ones that are having a problem. 307 of the state schools, fewer than 10% of children can read at level. Did you hear that? In 307 schools, only less than 10% can read? And it's worse than math. Less than 10% are at grade level in 853 schools. This is one state with the problems they're having. Now, you say, well, COVID did all that. Nah. According to this, before COVID, back in 2019, there were 21 schools that had no children at reading level. None. There were 21 schools. 37 with none in math. All right? So you got 21 in reading and 37 in math. But by 2024, after COVID, the numbers blew up to 24 and 80. That's what's going on. And let me tell you what's happening in Chicago. The teachers in Chicago, 1/3 of the teachers in the Chicago public school system send their own children to private schools. What does that tell you? 1/3 of all the teachers send their kids to private schools. They don't even want to be in the Chicago public school system. And yet, those kids that are reading deficient, math deficient, they're promoted to the next grade. So you send a kid that's failing in reading and math, and you put him or her, and you say, you're going to the next grade. What do you think the teacher in that grade is going to do? Going to promote them up. We're getting kids graduating from high school who don't know how to read and who don't know how to do math. And it's all happening in the land of Lincoln? You got to be kidding me. The head of the Chicago Teachers Union, a lady by the name of Stacy Davis Gates, even sends their children to private school. And that's what we're finding out. You know, the Chicago public school teachers make about, while only 11% of the black students can even read. Only, you heard me right, only 11% can read. And they're spending $29,000 a year on every single student. and less than 11% can read? Really? Since 2002, education spending has increased by 97%, folks. But reading proficiency has decreased by 63%, and math proficiency is down by 78%. This is according to the Illinois Policy Institute. So we pay the teachers $70,000 a year. The kids can't read, they can't do math, and they promote them on to the next grade. What am I missing? Well, what I'm missing probably is the fact that we are in a situation where a number of counties in the southern part of the state of Illinois want out. Sadly, they're not going to get out. But there's some new information coming from the land of Lincoln. The guy who became president had to learn to read and do everything in a little, a little house. Had dirt floor. And yet he made something of himself. And sadly, what I'm seeing is these children are growing up not knowing how to read or do math. What do you expect them to do when they become adults? How are they going to get a job? What are they going to resort to? You might be answering your own questions when you think about it. Not a good plan, folks. Not a good plan. And unfortunately, it's happening to our neighbors next door in the state of Illinois.